Welcome back to season two of our podcast. I think we survived the first season, although the last episodes were a little rough. That's okay. We've heard some tips and some um, comments from you guys. So thank you guys so much for those that have reached out in person, but also online. So today we're going to be led by Amarys, so I'll let her start.
Hey y'all, sorry. I just had a little bit of ice cream and so I'm burping a little bit. But
I didn't know you had ice cream.
And
Wow.
and who burped because of ice cream?
me.
I know. It's not like, it's not like soda ice
Yeah,
cream, is it? It's
yeah.
carbonated
I
ice
Was it
cream.
a float?
Ice cream float,
I
exactly.
anything I eat, it doesn't matter. Like it's
You
I don't
get
know.
burpy.
It's just gonna happen. But anyways, today I wanted to talk about something that can be very, very serious and at the same time it could be very traumatizing, very alarming. So this is a trigger warning for anybody that has ever dealt with body dysmorphia. Let this be your trigger warning. You may want to skip the video, or I don't know if you are strong enough to listen to it and or you can relate to it and or you have something to say as well. But anyways, we want to let you know that you're not alone and it happens. So here we go. So I'm gonna tell y'all a story that happened to me when I was in high school that I think is the root of my body dysmorphia that I still struggle with a little bit to this day. But now it's different because I'm a mom and postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, all that stuff has come into play. But in high school, I mean, I was a tiny little girl. There was like zero excuse for me to have body dysmorphia because I like ranged from 94 pounds to 98 pounds. So like that's a small figure. Um, and I mean, truly, I was a small figure. I could wear a kid's 10, 12, like kids medium to kids large, and then I never went past an adult small. It was mostly juniors, extra small, small. But and then like in pant size, it was like a size double zero to size. I want to say the biggest I ever got was a 4, but those were like falling off of me. Like I was a solid 2. I want to say like a 2 short fit me perfect. Anyway, so I was a part of a dance ministry, and I mean I enjoyed my time on the ministry, and we wore, if it wasn't like those big, huge, large skirts, that they're like, they take up a lot of fabric and they go all the way to the floor and they're wide. We went from that to wearing those like gaucho pants or like palazzo pants, I think they're called, which they're like this, they're like, they're wide. Each pant leg is wide. Um, so I mean, they were designed to kind of flow with our movements. They were very flowy. And I can recall one time where we had a dance practice where the dance leader told us, I have something to tell everybody. She was all, we need to sit down, everyone get in a circle, sit down, crisscross, we got to talk about something. And I knew it was kind of serious because anytime we came in a circle like that, it was always like, oh, so and so passed away, or so and so is dealing with a divorce, or, it was always big news. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, what is she about to tell us? So we got into the circle. And mind you, I mean, the ministry was kind of large at the time. I think there was like 90 of us, but there was like a mixture of, there was boys on the team. There was, little girls, medium girls, I guess you could say like 8, 9 years old. So I think that they started the ministry at that time. It started at 6, maybe. So the youngest was 6, the oldest was like, I don't know, 60 some. So it's like a broad age range.
Yeah.
You got little girls, medium girls, how I said. I think it mostly was teenagers though. Like I couldn't tell you an exact number, but there was at least 20 of us that were from like 13 to 18. When this specific moment happened, I want to say that I was 16 years old. So anyways, I was 16 years old, and there's other girls that are around the same age as I am, and the dance leader is like, so I got news from the pastor that we look large. And I was like, pardon me? Like, what do you mean we look large? And she was like, yeah. The pastor said that, apart from the female figure, like the womanly shape that everyone has, that the pastor sees rolls, the pastor sees lumps, the pastor sees big bellies, the pastor sees big thighs. And I was like,
The pastor should not be looking too
well,
much.
Why is the pastor so focused on everyone's
you guys,
bodies like that? That's,
I don't know how I looked like to her in that moment. And
oh
mind you, it kind
man.
of felt, I know she was saying this because, and she even said it, I'm saying this not because it's coming from me, but because the pastor told me that I have to tell you guys. And I was like, okay. And I don't know how I must have looked, but I felt like the blood, like, like flowed out of my body. Like I felt like I must have looked ghostly at that moment because I was truly in shock that she said that. And
I'm in shock hearing it.
yeah, and not only did she say that to all of us, but she said, and I quote, "You all have to start wearing girdles. You all have to start wearing shapewear." And
What?
I was like, what? Because I mean, I was a tiny girl.
Are those like the body, like, it's like
Yeah,
a corsets that kind of squeeze you
yes.
Yep, they're
together?
the new corsets.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
she said it in Spanish because that's the culture, She said you have to wear a faja, and that's what, like the faja is like.
Yeah.
It's supposed to tighten you up to where it smooths all your body. Like you don't have any rolls. You don't have like if you have a big belly, it like sucks it in,
Hmm.
and it's supposed to like lift everything too. I don't know.
Mhm.
But anyways, she told us that the pastor said that we have to wear girdles, that we have to wear shapewear.
Interesting.
Yo, I and again I go back to saying this because I truly was a tiny little girl. But I got so worried. I remember going home, looking in the mirror, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, I see what roles I want to cry. I see what roles the pastor was talking about. I see I see the big belly. I see the thighs. I see loose arms.
Yeah.
And especially I was like, my arms are up in the air most of the time when I'm in doing worship dance. And all of a sudden I was so self-conscious that all of this was going to be jiggling.
Yeah.
Anything was going to be jiggling. Then I started to look at my face and be like, okay, my
Hmm.
face is too round. like my cheeks are gonna jiggle, or like
That's
all of a
horrible.
sudden I saw every single imperfection that truly wasn't even there. It
Yeah.
it was made up by this pastor. And I don't even know if this pastor meant to say that about the entire ministry, especially the little girls that are 6 years old, and to the girls that are 18 years old. I don't know if he was talking to any of those people, but I feel like the words that came out of his mouth that went to the worship leader and then came to us, it affected those of us that are in that
Yeah.
range, because we had never seen any imperfection until then.
Yeah. My heart really hurts hearing this story. It's such a
Yeah,
traumatic experience for you and all those girls that had to go through that. Because even from my own experiences, I've I even people making fun of me or calling me fat, but hearing it from the pastor
mhm,
has to hit, differently. There's someone you look up to, a leader, basically saying that you are not physically appropriate or pleasing to him is what it's making it sound like to
yeah,
me. It's like to his standards of where you should be physically, like to the whole team. And it just seems completely uncalled for and just like absolutely unprecedented for me to hear a pastor saying that. Maybe it's more common, but for me, it feels, I can't believe a pastor would say that.
yeah. And
It's not,
because of my age, and I'm sure the other girls can relate, we didn't know any different. We thought it was normal to hear something like that from a pastor, because that's the only church we had ever gone to. We were young, and so when he said that, yeah, it hurt, but at the same time, we were like, well, we gotta do what we're told. I remember
yeah.
I told my mom, like, oh, I was like, we have to go to Ross. And my mom was like, for what? Like, why do you have to go to Ross? And I was like, because I have to buy a girdle, I have to buy like the shapewear. And like, she didn't even bat a lash because she was at that meeting herself. And she was like, well, rules are rules. And that's how, like, my
Mm.
family, we grew up, um, respecting our authority. We grew up, what's the word? Like being rule followers. That's what
Like
who we were.
conforming to whatever
Yeah,
leadership
yeah.
says.
So when she said you have to wear a girdle from now on, and I mean this practice, I think it was on a Friday, and we were gonna dance on Sunday. So I think we went on, between those 2 days, we went on Saturday to find like the shapewear or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have to get it because if I don't, they're not gonna let me dance on Sunday.
I don't want to. By no means I want to. What's the right word? Um, not think it's a big deal, but I'm just trying to understand the mindset of the pastor as well. Not saying that he's right at all, because I do have my thoughts, and I'll share those later. But was this by any chance like a special event, like Easter or anniversary or Christmas or anything like that?
I think we were gearing up to do a special event, but it wasn't gonna be that in the within the next few days. Um, like we were definitely practicing for something big, but
Mm.
when he said that, I think it was just going to be like a regular Sunday
Yeah.
service.
And the reason I asked is because I know I visited her growing up church a few times
I
before.
visited once actually.
Oh yeah, 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 you
Yeah,
did. And I never got a good feeling, and I always shared my feelings to her about it. I remember the first few times that I did, she felt like I was attacking her. And again, it's a whole process. Like we even talked to her sister about it, which I hope she doesn't mind that I share this. But her sister as well, like she went to school at Dallas Christian College, and they were learning about theology of the Bible, and the stuff that didn't match the theology of the church was teaching would get her also mad. Like
It would get her riled up. She
it
wanted to defend what she knew and what she grew up with.
yeah, so it just
Yeah.
kind of felt like it was an attack towards them, um, and not really like, well, just the theology. It could be a little bit wrong. And the reason I ask is because I know they kind of revolve in like 4 or 5 special events in the year, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well,
Um,
there's for sure there's the anniversary, and I don't know why, but that's the number one like big event. I don't think it should be, but it is. And then number two, I want to say within the dance ministry, if we're talking about the dance
yeah.
ministry, then I would say it's Christmas.
Hmm.
And then number three is the women's conference.
Hmm.
Number four has to be Easter.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. There's also, like a VBS worship team, but
Yeah.
that's separate.
Yeah.
And that's big too.
So with that, I kind of feel like he is focused on the image of the church because in all those 4 events is where you have main visitors or he has special guests or
Yeah.
whatever show up.
For sure,
And
the anniversary, there was always like invited special guests to preach, but not just that. Every single pastor that was like under his like what do they call it? Like a spiritual anointing or whatever, like people that he has mentored, all of those pastors were going to be in attendance.
yeah.
Mm.
So and if that's happening, like he wants to see like, hey, my church is perfect, right?
My church is full of
And the perfectly formed women and who are physically perfect as well.
Yeah, yeah. I
That's what he's
mean,
trying to
yeah.
and
show
that's the thing.
everyone.
That's what it falls into is like he's
Not saying that,
focused.
just to clarify, not saying that his definition of perfect equals perfect. I'm not saying
Yeah,
any of that, just to be
yeah,
clear.
yeah. I
Just what
understand.
he's saying that to his standards is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, and we talked a little bit about this topic, but one of the things is the correction coming from a pastor. We've hit it a little bit in a podcast before, not too much. Um, but you've experienced it more
Mhm.
than I have. The experience I've had is more of a private thing. It's like I was raised Catholic. It was through confession, and we would have a conversation. He's like, "Hey, you need to correct these things. This is what you have to do." Um, he would offer like guidance in other places, like you can go to this place to seek more help or whatever. And that was it. So that was my experience of being corrected by a pastor or leader of the church. Um, Other people experience it differently from the churches. Some people never experience it. Let's be honest. Some people go to church.
I'm not even sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah,
I don't
some people go
know.
to church and they experience church. Like they might feel a push
Like from God
from
Himself.
God Himself and the Holy
The
Spirit.
conviction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
conviction is the word I was looking for. Not a push, a conviction feeling, which is great because I think if sermons don't have conviction to them, then we're just serving the sheep, which is not what who we should be serving. So I think there's a lot of people that were raised differently. So some of you guys are listening, maybe you've never been corrected in your life. And I don't think that per se might be, like she said, might be the worst thing ever, because there could be worse for sure. So, what are your thoughts? I mean, Wolf, I mean, just in that topic on correction, because what she said, the pastor wasn't even there. Like he
No.
didn't even relay the message, first of all.
Yeah, I would not definitely, I wouldn't categorize this situation certainly as not a correction or a disciplinary
No.
action. I would call it more of a almost an insulting, sort of like request. It's like an insulting request to the ladies and the
I
women,
get it. in his eyes,
In
it was
his eyes,
correction.
it's correction, saying
In
how
his eyes, it's
in his
correct.
eyes it's correction. In my eyes, it's not.
Yeah,
It's definitely not appropriate correction, obviously, but I have my experience more lines up with Amarys. I grew up in churches where the pastor is the central authority. In other words, that no one really questions what the pastor says as far as instructions, or even it would seem more like a command. If the pastor
Oh, yeah.
says it, it goes.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
whatever it is. If the pastor says everyone needs to be here at 6 a.m. and everyone needs to dress in white, that's what you're going to do. No questions asked.
Yeah.
That's the type of church I grew up in as well.
yeah.
And so I can understand, I can imagine that this was a detriment to some of the other girls and women who experienced this as well, not just you, I'd imagine. But in their eyes, a lot of times, I can imagine being in that scenario where you're thinking, well, I don't fully understand why, but it's the pastor, so we're going to be obedient. We're going to do what he says, and we're not really going to think about it. My question is, why did he have to mention, oh, I can see the rolls. I can see he
The
said two
thighs.
big thighs. Like all he had to do with, like, I'm not saying this was right either, but I wonder why he felt like he needed to emphasize those things
On,
instead of just saying
on
where
specific.
what's him call it? What do you call it again? The gur?
The girls or the
Yeah,
shape hair.
yeah, why didn't you just say put up, you guys just need to wear shades? I'm not saying that's right either, but I'm wondering why he felt the need he had to bring up all that, because that could be like that would hurt someone's feelings. That would hurt my feelings. I've never, like, people have called me fat before. People have hurt my feelings talking about my size and weight plenty of times in my life, but never from like a pastor leadership figure. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mhm.
I wonder why he felt the need to emphasize all of that.
I honestly don't know. And I think I kind of remember the dance leader saying like specifically like these are not my words, these are the pastor's words, but and she said something along the lines of he just wanted me to deliver the message as a woman to woman, I guess you could
Mm,
say. Um, but in my mind, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, I mean, we, because one of the complaints was that he was like, I can see y'all's female shape. And it's like, well, because we're female, like, what, what do you mean?
you can't change the fact that you're a
Yeah, I can't
female.
change my body. And mind you, we were like he wasn't talking about being able to see our breasts or our butt or like midriff. No skin was showing. We were literally wearing turtlenecks, long sleeve shirts, and again, it was either a really large skirt or some really wide pants that like it looked like a skirt, it resembled a skirt. And so like we were completely covered. But for some reason that was not enough. Like he was dissatisfied with the roles, he was dissatisfied with jiggling here, jiggling there. He was
Mhm.
dissatisfied with um
It's
like
just,
our overall appearance. I don't
I
know.
just like, I would never, I don't understand how you can be in church and like I don't even understand why those things would even come to the forefront of his mind when
Yeah.
he's watching.
I
That's
It's
what
not
guess
I'm
like you
saying.
were the cleavage was
He's trying to
showing.
put up a full-on experience, and he's looking at small details here
yeah.
and there.
I guess
Like trying to his mind, he's trying to be a perfectionist.
yeah, I guess in some way it was distracting to him, like to see some, shaking or rolling or whatever,
Mm,
because he was right at the front and we were right in front of him, elevated
yeah.
because that altar is ginormous.
Yeah.
It's humongous. And so if he's standing there at the front, I don't know, I guess like he could see everything. Unlike
Mm,
if somebody was, even if you were in the second row, you'd still be a little bit further and you would be able to see less because this
mm,
church, just the way it's set up to give the appearance of a very large church. And so even sitting one row back, you're quite a distance from the altar, from the stage. Um, and it's a little bit like you see less when you're in the second row. So the fact that
Yeah.
he was there in the first row and he hardly ever like stayed in the place where he well, I'm not saying there was a specific place where he was supposed to be, but because the row where he was at in front of him, there's floor, right? And
Yeah.
then a little bit in front of that is like the carpet where the altar starts. Well, he'd always be on the carpet. He would hardly ever be back where the row is supposed to be. He'd still always be like a little bit closer.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, so I don't know if all of it was just, too distracting to him or what, but
Yeah. Whatever the reason, to me, I just want to be clear. I think it's inappropriate
yeah,
completely. So I just want to be clear. That's my stance of like, this is, regardless of what his reasons are, to me,
yeah.
it's in completely inappropriate and
I'm,
uncalled
I'm,
for. Um,
I'm gonna throw a, I guess I'm not attacking anybody. I'm gonna be clear with that. But just, I guess with full honesty and unfilteredness, like we promised.
yeah.
First of all, it damaged a lot of people.
Hmm.
Let's put that clear. Because there was a lot of young
Yeah.
girls that, and I knew them because I met them as I met my wife in college. I met her friends. A lot of them, they were healthy girls. They weren't overweight girls. It hurt a lot of young girls, but it also hurt women that now my wife is in that stage.
Yeah.
Like there's things you can't help um,
Yeah.
after pregnancy. That's just at the end of the day, that's just what it is, right? You can do all you want. It could help for sure, yes, but there's just certain things that your body changes. That's just how it is. That's how God built the woman's body, and
Yeah.
we can't go saying stuff like
Percent.
too lumpy or too stretchy or whatever you want to use.
Yeah.
I think in those two cases they hurt them. It was hurtful. It could also have been, and I'm not defending him because he doesn't need to be defended. I've met the guy.
I know you.
I know who he is.
You're just trying to understand. You're trying to see his perspective, give him some
But
of
I'm
the
trying
benefit.
to put
Yeah.
perspective if it
Put
was someone
perspective
else.
on
Like,
it.
because there's pastors that
Yeah.
may say stuff like this that have good intention. The thing is, they approach it the wrong way. And that's, I guess, what I'm trying to say. Maybe if there is correction in it, then it should be approached. Because I've been approached about my weight already, and I've been approached it in different ways, right? Um, Amarys has approached it to me in a loving way, but I've had other people that are Christians that are approached to me in a like I can't believe that you're the way that you're at any stage of your life kind of way, right? So I think
Know that. Yeah.
overweightness is at the end of the day a sign of sin for some people. I guess I'll put that on the table for some people. In my case, I would say yes. I mean, there is a sign of gluttony. There's a sign of no self-control and stuff like that. And there should be correction in there. But I think people don't
It's
humble themselves and speak truth in a loving way. And they do it in ways like, first of all, like in a group setting or in a public setting. Some of those conversations, like if it is affecting someone's health, like for example, me, it does affect my health. Like I'm not putting a blind side on that. Amaris has talked to me about it, like, hey, this is affecting your health. But beyond that, she's told me we want you here with the girls. We want you here
mhm.
uh to
Cool.
to to help us, house Wolf if we have to house Wolf in the future. So so but but I mean we've had the conversation
It's
multiple
because they love me,
multiple
guys.
times.
Okay.
And I do appreciate that she does into it in a humble, loving way, which I think some pastors they miss that target because I think they have to understand that well, first the church is not their church; it's Christ's church. And because it's Christ Church, every single member, including themselves, are being sanctified. We're not saints. We're being sanctified. So we all have different walks. We all have different faults. Um, and if you're going to start correcting people, start with yourself. And then start correcting people. But everyone can be corrected. Like, I guess where it kind of falls. And we've kind of had this conversation before that sometimes we feel like people are targeted to be corrected, and some people we put a blind side because
they do more for the church, I
they do
guess you
more for
could
the
say.
church, they're necessary for the church, so on and so forth. Or we just don't want to have a awkward conversation with a good friend of ours that we've had for years and break that relationship with them. So I think there's like a lot of exceptions that people put, but then there's also a lot of like targeting, like, oh, well, he's the oddball from the group, or he's new, or whatever. Uh, I think people are targeted, and people are targeted in a non-loving way. Um, and I mean, they feel the target, like the target behind their backs. And I think that's where we build
Yeah.
a lot of hurt from church, and a lot of stories of people saying, like she said, she was hurt. Like, um,
Yeah. I mean,
it,
that was
she probably,
one occasion.
you probably weren't even the problem. Like, let's be honest.
That's
No, she wasn't. Like, and then there was probably
um
other girls who weren't
looking,
even near being overweight. Like
yes.
medically, let's talk about from a medical
I
standpoint.
don't honestly,
Then none of them were, probably several were not near being overweight
I don't
No,
think
medically.
any of them, because even
None of,
at least her
my
age
mom was
group.
there at the time, and my mom, she isn't like a tiny woman. Like she's thick. Let me just put it like that. She's thick. But
no.
but she never had like a protruding stomach or anything like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like my mom, if you look at her, it's like how Erwin said, like she is a mom.
She's a mom.
See,
Yeah.
the funny thing is like my brain doesn't consciously look at people and think, oh man, I couldn't even I'm not good at guessing people's weights. I'm not good at telling you if like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
this person's for
Well,
sure
because
overweight.
there's so many
But
cases, like
I
there
know,
are
yeah.
people that are overweight that they have a medical condition.
Yeah, they sometimes it's
That's
hormonal,
why,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah,
there's
there's
hormones.
hormonal problems, autoimmune, thyroid, there's all types of reasons why people can be overweight, you
Yeah, so
know.
there's
Uh,
so much to it that we just can't go, oh,
yeah.
you're being
Overweight. Yeah, because
gluttonous,
you're
or
gluttony. You
yeah,
have gluttony.
Yeah.
yeah.
And I do want
Uh,
to clarify, like, I do think, yes, there are appropriate times where someone can lovingly talk to someone about, their weight, particularly if it's someone who is close enough to them, has the information, and there actually is some sort of a problem where they care about their health and well-being. And that's in corporation with, them going to the doctor and them knowing that they have, some kind of obesity or overweight, and that's someone lovingly talking to them and trying to help and encourage them from a loving way. The situation here just seems like to me it doesn't seem appropriate at all, just because the pastor to a group of women making those comments, that's
yeah.
just where the inappropriateness
Yeah.
of it all. Not,
Well, and
and
she
again, not
even
saying like,
said like the clothes was loose on them in the sense of like, they're trying to make them
yeah,
like he has to be really lucky if the
Yeah.
clothes was like that loose, because
no,
I've seen what she kind of
tight.
mentioning. I kind of I can envision some of the clothing that she's imagining. You can't really see a person's body in those type of
Well,
clothes
No.
unless you're really looking.
Our
that's
Uh,
what
clothes
I'm wondering. If they're loose clothing, how would
they
you see
See, our
those
clothes
things?
were made to, first of all, they were custom fit because we would get like measures for them and stuff. But they were designed to be flattering on many like body types. So that had to be from the 6-year-old all the way to the 60-year-old woman.
mhm,
And
mhm.
so with that being said, yes, like they
Which, by the way, props to the 60-year-old woman,
she's
whoever,
still going.
whoever it is, props to her.
She's still going.
Very impressive.
Um,
Uh,
so anyways, like maybe, and I remember when they would measure us, the poor seamstress, she was like, "You guys, you all are growing girls." And see, for her, it's appropriate to say because she's a seamstress, right? And she would be measuring my bust, and she would say, "I'm gonna add 2 extra inches so that way it's loose on your bust." Well, by the time the outfit came, guess what? It was snug on my breast because I grew. And
yeah.
that was just the nature of
Being a
growing
girl,
up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the girls grow just like,
Yeah.
you guys were young, so you're still growing and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
And I want to go back to you talking about the punishments or like
Well, I didn't even touch that.
no, you
Did
you
I?
didn't you just kind of like scraped it. You said or maybe Wolf said because that he was trying to correct, right? So
Yeah.
I want to talk about the
I think Irvin said that.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I
He
want to
brought
talk
up,
about quickly, and this is just, like scratching the surface. Um, because I did face a lot of traumas with this specific situation to where this day I look in the mirror and I don't see myself the same. And I mean, I was almost on the verge of tears like a little while back or a little if you go rewind the video you can see where I was about to cry.
If you're
I
listening, you
know.
Yeah,
can.
because I mean it
And
was
if you started crying, then I would start crying because I'm already emotional today. I'm
yeah,
just kidding.
it was very traumatic and like a little after that I mean I really struggled. I was already tiny and I think I went through a period of time where I was like, okay, I gotta work out. I was going outside for a run a lot and I was watching what I ate. I still loved my McDonald's, but I was like, I'm gonna get the smallest combo or whatever. I got like a kid's meal or something. And I mean, I was starting to look like sickly. Like you could see all my like yes.
Collarbone.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
I guess the collarbone is not so bad, but like you could also see my ribs. That's
Mm.
when you know that I was like
Yeah.
starting to look a little sickly. And I remember a friend made a comment and she's still one of my friends till this day. And she's kind of distanced herself a little bit because of life, but anyway, she's still someone that I consider a friend and someone that I know is always honest with me. Well, during that time, she looked at a picture, an older picture of me, and she almost cried and she said, I miss this Amarys. And I didn't even know what to tell her. I was like, what do you mean you miss that Amarys? I was like, I'm the same person. And she was like, no, no, you're not. And I never told her about this experience, and she wasn't there, and she doesn't know what happened. But she said, "I miss somebody," and then when I said I'm still the same person, she said, "No, something happened." And she was like,
Mm.
"I know you, and I know something happened." And I, I didn't blame it on this situation at all. I tried to blame it on like, oh, well, this guy, did this or I went through this or they switched me schools. I try to blame it on a lot of things, but
Yeah.
really it was this experience that I mean, it's the first time I'm talking about it, but it's this time that it changed everything. Okay, let me try to catch my breath before we talk about
Take a breath.
the correction because that's a whole other thing. Oh my gosh.
While she catches her breath, and I'll give you a
Okay.
second. Hey, if you're going through any issues like this, um, and especially if it's happening in your church, do reach out for some counseling.
Yeah.
I mean, there's counseling out there that is still Christian based. I've taken counseling multiple times at different stages of my life. Amarys as well. I don't know if you will have, but I won't speak for you. But we have, and there's no shame in taking counseling.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
So if
Um,
this is an issue that comes close to heart, or any other issue, um, yeah,
yeah.
there is help out there. There's Christian help. Sometimes we take apart the Word of God and use it for our own benefits, and unfortunately, these are examples of the results of that. Is that
Yeah.
um, some people might benefit from it, while others, their
Yeah.
lives are affected in a damaging way. So.
Yeah,
uh,
extremely detrimental. Like it leaves a long-lasting effect on, not only Maurice's life, but the other girls' lives. They're impacted very, negatively from, hearing those sorts of things, especially from a leader and a pastor, someone you look up to, because it hurts even more. The person, like someone who's closer to you can hurt you more than someone who's not as close.
Yeah.
And this type of situation is someone who's in a leadership position and someone you're looking up and they're saying these, what I would call inappropriate comments. Just from what I can hear, I would call it inappropriate. And like, it's so hurtful because I even remember to this day when people called me names, called me fat. Like I remember all of it since I was a child. I remember those things. And for some reason, my brain remembers those negative things of what people said about me almost more than the positive things. And I remember feeling hurt and like, from people, people called me all kinds of mean things, particularly about my weight, because I had periods in my life where I was like, I would consider myself overweight, so, I can't imagine what it would feel like coming from, that type of leader,
And
that type of
there's ties.
leadership figure.
I
Um,
feel like I feel like this tie that she's had, she's been able to, or she's been working on it. Obviously, it's not something that just goes away from day to day.
yeah,
But we also got to consider there's women and girls and little girls that were there that maybe are still having effects from these conversations
yeah,
that are now passing it down to other members or their own daughters
Right.
or siblings or whoever, which it becomes a chain. I mean, it really does.
it
Um,
does.
because there is, I think in the church that we attend here in Mission has a little bit of mindset of that, but they do have a humble way to see it. But most churches that are bigger than, a few hundred people, they start looking for perfection in dance ministries and music ministries and anything that's being placed up there in the altar. There has to be some type of, working to perfection. I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that comes with us being sanctified. We are also working to be better worshipers, but there is wrong ways to do it. And I think this is a clear example of a hard push, a insults and stuff like that. It's not the best way to grow ministries. So
Yeah, it's like, there's a way, like, obviously, like I feel like not saying the pastor had any rights to say anything, but it didn't even seem like it was a focus of the well-being or health of the girls. And like what you're saying, they weren't even medically overweight, but even if they were, it's not his place to say anything. Like,
yeah.
it doesn't seem like his heart was in the right place with his
Yeah.
comments at
And,
all. It
and
doesn't
see,
seem
and I
like it at
feel,
all.
and that's what I meant from the beginning. I do feel like there is some right because at the end of the day, he is the pastor. There is a right for correction.
But
He
about
he did it
this.
wrong. He did it wrong. I
But
mean,
not
no, no,
about
no. I mean,
calling
yeah. No,
calling him out
I
about
get what you're saying. He did it wrong. Some people didn't deserve it. There was a lot of things he did wrong. I don't think it's fair to say there's no right for him to do that because I think if God has placed someone in leadership,
I'd
which
say there's no
I
right
don't
for
know if
him.
God has really placed him in leadership.
I'm saying
To be
there's no
honest.
right for him to make comments like saying there's rules and
Oh yeah, yeah, no, no,
saying,
no.
I'm talking about him describing the women's
Yeah,
bodies in
being
that
very
negative
specific.
way.
Yeah,
I'm saying he doesn't have a right for that. That's what I'm
yeah.
saying.
Mhm.
Like,
Um, so yeah, going back to the correction, just like the last 15 minutes I want to talk about this. Or if I can get those 15 minutes. Um, so just in general, the correction at this specific church, I always felt like it was done incorrectly because I mean, Irvin said that this could have been correction. I don't honestly don't think it was. I think it was more of a vain thing. I don't, or more like, yes, he just wanted everyone to look good. I don't know. Really, I don't know because I was so young that I couldn't even attempt to understand
You're 15,
you're
what.
14.
saying
I think I was like 16. I think.
you're saying it could have been like a pride thing.
I think it was. I think it was a pride thing. I think it was how Urban kind of mentioned it, like he just wanted to show off, but and or maybe he only wanted the better body types to be up there. I really don't know. I don't know. But I think I was around 16 years old and I think I kind of just snowballed from there when it came to me participating in this ministry. So when you were a part of this ministry, you had to sign a contract. And I don't know if I signed an NDA or not, but like if I did, I mean I'm about to break it. But we had to sign the
A
contract
contract?
that yes, that basically said see, I don't even remember like half the things that were on there. I'm not even quite sure I read it. I just knew I wanted to be a part of the ministry because dancing is my passion. So I signed that contract. But for sure, I knew that it said you could not have a boyfriend. You know,
That's interesting. I didn't know that. Okay.
yeah.
That's something I
So,
didn't have in my church was
so if you
contracts.
had if you had a
You've exceeded my experience now.
if you had a boyfriend, you could not dance. And so,
What?
apart from my parents not letting me have a boyfriend, and that was probably one of the reasons why, um, I hid my relationship that I had in high school because I was like, if the church finds out, that's it. I'm sat down. And you might be thinking, like, sat down, what does that mean? Well, I mean, this is very common in that church and in other churches as well. If you do something that the pastor does not agree with, they sit you down. Just simple as that. You don't minister, you don't serve, you basically you're in like a leave of some sort. You have to be sat down for a certain amount of time. For me, they were like, you're gonna be sat down. I think they sat me down for 6 months. And so for 6 months, because they did end up finding out about my relationship. I honestly don't even know how that came about either. Um, something about
A
someone,
snitch. I'm just
someone,
kidding.
yeah, no, seriously, someone came forward and said they saw me with so and so, and okay, whatever. I don't know who it was or why they decided to snitch, but
We're not sharing names anyway, so.
No
well,
names in this podcast. No
what?
names.
No, no. But anyways,
But it was you who's listening. I'm
You
kidding.
know who you are. I'm
but
just
Yeah.
they,
kidding.
yeah, they did. And I can recall that was another traumatizing moment in my life where the dance leader came to my house. Um, she was like, we're gonna have a meeting. And I mean, my dad is not a stranger to family meetings because my dad, every single time something goes on in our family, or like if he has to address something, he's gonna call the family meeting and we're gonna sit down in the living room, or back then it was the living room. For a moment, it was the dining room, but I think we're back to the living room. We would sit down and they would, tell us like, this is what's going on and this is what's gonna happen going
The
forward.
results, yeah.
Yeah. So it was my dance leader's turn to do that. She came to the house, she sat us down, she said, we're gonna have a meeting. And she said, basically, she was like, so we found out that you're in a relationship with, so and so. And I mean, I couldn't confirm or deny. I was like, okay. And she was like, well, you do like him, don't you? And see, in my household, we were not even allowed to have a crush. We were not allowed
How does that could
to
work?
you were
I
just
know.
You control who you have a crush on.
tell you why. I'll tell
You're
you
not allowed to even have a crush on
because we
someone.
weren't supposed to be talking to guys.
But
So,
sometimes people just by interacting with someone they develop a
well, if
crush.
I couldn't talk with someone, I couldn't have a crush, right? But anyways,
Hey, you didn't talk to
so
me. All I did, I moved into your room.
stop. So anyways, I I remember feeling my heart sinking into my stomach because I was like, I cannot make this confession right now that I have feelings for this person. But she was like, it's okay. You can have a crush. And I remember I started crying. And I was like, yes, I do like him. And she was like, yeah, and that's okay. And I remember my dad, I mean, I looked over to my dad and my dad was like
He's mad.
red, like tomato red because he was like, you what? But anyways,
Which
she
again, it's a natural reaction for most dads.
sure.
Yeah, most dads are not going, especially for their daughters,
Like
probably.
Yeah.
if I had, I mean,
When Angelina comes to you in the future.
I think my approach would be different.
Mhm.
Obviously, I'm a different dad, but it's still gonna hurt me whenever my daughters start dating, any age, even if they start dating when they're 23 or 24. Um,
What?
if
That's the
they're
minimum
dating
age,
then,
right?
or they start dating when they're 14 or 15, which is kind of what we're like allowing to maybe have their first boyfriend. I think it's gonna hurt me anyways. I know when my sister started dating, my dad cried for a whole day. My sister just reminded me of that
For
story
real?
a few days ago
He
that my
cried?
dad my dad cried for a whole
I'm
day.
I'm
Uh,
not a father, so maybe I don't understand yet, but once I'm a father, maybe I
Yeah.
yeah.
will.
No, honestly, I don't understand either because to me, I'm like, it's a part of life. It's gonna happen. And so I remember her saying,
That's funny.
sorry, I remember her
You
saying
birthed them.
that, I remember her saying like that, okay, since you made this confession or since, we found out you're having a relationship with him, we're so sorry, but you're not going to be able to minister for 6 months. You have to be sat down. You still have to come to every service. You still have to come to practices. Um, but you will not be able to be up on the altar. And I was just like that was the most devastating thing that I could ever feel.
Mm.
And it wasn't like I could be like, oh, you know what, then I just quit because that was gonna look like oh, you want to continue to like date this person just so and so you're not gonna dance.
Some of his church
Which
is like,
which
no
I
one.
had a friend. She was allowed to have a boyfriend from her mom,
What if you're over 18? These are
and
fun
she
girls. This
can't.
contract was just for girls under 18. We're not allowed to have a boyfriend, or was it in general?
I think it was everyone. I'm not sure because I
If it's,
remember.
I mean, I don't agree with the church having this much
Yeah,
involvement in
I
people's lives. I
remember.
don't think it's appropriate. I
Yeah.
think that's a parents, that's a family situation,
For
especially if it's
kids,
illegal.
yeah, for kids,
It's a
that's a parent's
family, parents.
decision. For an adult, I
There
understand.
was an adult, and I was about to tell you. So I remember I don't know if she was about to be engaged or I think, I have a feeling she was already engaged. I remember her looking at her when she handed us the contract and she was like, I have to talk to you later. And she was just like, oh, okay. And I remember her saying like, this relationship was approved by my parents, it was approved by the pastor. And she was just like, well, I have to talk to the pastor. Well, I don't really know what happened, but she never really ministered ever since. So I don't know about her situation,
There's no exceptions.
but I do remember that my one of my close friends, we were part of the Fab Five. She had a boyfriend, and it was allowed by her parents. But and she told her the same thing, like I have to talk to you after. And she basically told her like, you because I guess because she was younger, she was like, you can't be in a relationship and be a part of the ministry, so you have to, either choose him or choose the ministry. And she chose him, so she quit.
Yeah.
Good for her.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of power in that. I want to again flip the coin and say, like I think there some people, 'cause obviously some people just want control. But let's say you don't want control. You're thinking of other things like you don't want someone who's up in the altar ministering every day to have dated half the congregation, right? Which,
Right.
let's be honest, there is some girls that do that. So those are special cases. I think those are cases that we have to talk to them like, hey, you can't be dating every cute guy that steps into
I
this
think
church.
Well,
they
yeah,
they for some reason though, and I think this is what it was.
that dating in the church, I guess dating in the church, if you're working in the church, that's a different situation. Like
they
you're
I
dating members versus what you're doing outside of the church. If you have like, it seems like different situations.
I don't
Because
Yeah,
some
think
companies, I've worked at
thought
companies where they told me they have
dating.
rules about dating at different jobs and companies.
yeah.
I've done
Yeah.
that.
See, the
They're
thing
like,
is, I think that they equated dating with fornicating.
You're getting pregnant next week.
yeah,
Yeah,
fornicating,
yeah.
which
They were like,
dating is
I
sinning,
think
basically.
they were like, if you're dating anybody, even if it's in the church, you're having sex.
It's gonna lead to that. Yeah.
And so, I mean, and that wasn't the case for either of us, or I can't speak for the girl that was engaged or about to be engaged, but for me and my friend that I know personally, that wasn't the case for us.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think there's special cases. I think there is and this is a huge topic. We're running out of time. We probably will have to do a part
This is
two.
like another topic,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a whole topic. But I
mhm,
think correction in some cases, like there's cases that you should sit people down.
yeah.
I think
Look,
some people get power hungry and start sitting people down for small things that shouldn't be. But like, if there's someone who's clearly not living a Christian life but still wants to minister, I think that's when we have to go and say, okay, you're not living a Christian life. You're doing drugs and doing all this stuff in the week, and then you want to come and minister to people. Like there's, I think, extreme cases, and also not so extreme cases, but like, if there's a girl dating half the congregation as well. Um, those are the cases that we do step in and say, okay, maybe you shouldn't be ministering, or you need a little bit more growth before you start ministering again.
Mhm.
Um, but I completely agree with
it,
her in most cases because we've talked about it. Some people do grow power hungry and say, okay, we're gonna sit that person down, that down, and then everyone else who is also sinning, we're just gonna ignore your sins, and which I mentioned earlier. I think then we start picking and choosing who we want up
I,
there.
yeah, I just think like I think it's overextending power and it's too much control, and that's just what it appears to be from my perspective. Urban, you have mentioned correction a few times tonight. So I wanted to ask this,
Don't
do
correct me.
you do you think, correction in terms of weight, do you think it's okay for a pastor to correct someone about their weight?
Yeah, yeah. I think there is instance
So
that
saying,
that
but
come.
how would you find that? My question is, how would you find that appropriate, considering the pastor may not know everyone's situation? Like, how would you find that appropriate?
Well, the pastor has to know the person. And that's the thing is a pastor will know his sheep. If it's a new member, then obviously no. But if it's someone who he knows that is struggling in sin, it should be approached. It should be encouraged to lose some
Sin,
weight.
you mean like gluttony is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I know I fall into that sin. I'm not saying I'm not doing anything about it. I guess I'll put that. I am trying. In fact, before this call, I told you guys that I'm finally going to a doctor here in the U.S. of A. So I'm definitely trying to lose weight. Um, it's a struggle because there's other things in my calendar of my daily day that happens that I just have no control of. And sometimes I do, but I put my girls and my wife sometimes before me going to the gym because I don't think it's right for me to come from work and go, okay, I went to the gym and leave my wife with the kids by herself. Which a lot of guys do that, you know. I don't think it's right to do that, so I just don't do it. There's other ways to lose weight, yes, and I have been trying. So I think it should be approached. I don't think it should be approached in every single instance, but I think every sin, especially if someone is struggling in it, should be approached. Um, like I said, was raised differently when it comes to like being in a small room, confessing my sins, having an open conversation with someone that personally I knew and trusted. You know, you see the movies where they go into a little small room and they don't see the priest and they just say their sins. I never did that. I would go into a room and sit face to face with the priest. I would tell the
Yeah.
priest face to face.
I
Oh,
I don't think to me, here's why I wouldn't say the pastor should correct someone's weight because I don't think it's too there's too many variables involved onto what's really going on. I think if this person is going to a medical doctor and that person is saying they need to lose weight, the pastor can act as a guide and accountability
Mhm.
person for them, but it's
Yeah,
hard for the pastor to make a judge like a determination that this person needs to lose weight because that's where I'm like because
yeah,
then how do they know
well,
without
I'm
getting
not
data,
saying for them
medical
to
data? Like, because
not
you
for
gotta
them
get
to
medical, the doctor gets
determine.
medical data and stuff.
Yeah, I'm not saying for them to determine like how to
Like
lose
you're
weight or anything like
clinically
that.
obese.
No,
Yeah.
no, no. I'm not saying to give a medical response to them. I'm just saying for them to approach it and to actually acknowledge it to some members. I think that's one of the sins that most people ignore here in the U.S. That and pride is another one, and gossiping is another one that people just ignore because they think that, oh, it just won't do damage, or if we approach it, they're gonna feel offended. I think all those sins should be approached. I agree with you. The doctor has a better knowledge of their situation. They should go to a doctor. There's people that are not going to a doctor. I mean, I just told you guys, it's my first time going to a USA doctor um, since I was 17 years old. I haven't
Yeah.
sat down with a doctor in the US since how old am I now? So it's been 14 years, and I'm not the only case. Most men my age don't go to doctors. Um,
Yeah, I
so
haven't gone in a little while now.
yeah, so for us to sit and
So
say, well, let's just wait to see what the doctor tells him when he's already dead or when he's already way too far into his obesity or stuff like that, I think they
mm.
should be like again
Then that's
in a loving way.
okay. I see
You're
what you're
loving
saying
this
because
person.
you're it depends on where I guess someone's putting the pastor in their life. It really
yeah.
does. Like
I think, I
how
think,
close you are with your pastor and the
yeah,
relationship you have. Because to me, if it was a close family member, a close friend, or someone you loved and trusted, and they, the pastor, I guess it just really depends on how well they know a
yeah,
person and like how much data and information do they have on
yeah,
someone.
Well,
Because
and
it
if
could feel like, yeah, if they had an eating disorder or if they had, a medical problem and they didn't know it. And he's just like, hey, and the pastor comes up and is like, why
Yeah.
why can't you lose weight or something? Like, I
Yeah,
feel
Hmm.
like to me, what if that causes some kind of like detriment effect on that person where you know, they
Yeah.
have
yeah,
develop an eating disorder or they develop serious problems. But I guess if they were close enough to them, they would have more information about their situation, like,
yeah,
I guess to me, I never imagined a pastor being that involved with someone in the
Yeah.
congregation. That's
I'm
where
with
I'm like,
I'm with you because I grew up in that setting, especially in this situation. The pastor was like kind of untouchable to us. Like we didn't have any sort of conversations with him really. Like he didn't really know who we were. He was just someone that we kind of like a king. Like we knew that he was, above us and like we should listen to him, but we didn't really have any relationship with him at all, not even like a pastor uh church member relationship. Um and I kind of agree with Wolf. I gotta side with him more on this side. I mean on this
I'm
topic,
kidding.
especially because of the traumas I faced. That's one thing, but another thing is I don't know. I just feel like that's more of the place for, yeah, like a medical professional rather than a pastor
I think,
to say something about someone's body appearance, because in reality you're not saying anything about the person's health because you wouldn't know. You're saying something about the person's appearance.
see, that's where I'm coming across, and like obvious, like maybe the pastor walks to tell someone, hey, I think you need to see. I'd recommend you seeing a doctor, and you need to get your health checked on. You need to, you know, get some data on how you're doing physically. Or
Yeah,
ask that person, like maybe they're going about it in a more subtle way if he doesn't fully understand the situation, of like trying to understand the person's situation, and then advising them to get medical attention and medical help. Because to me, one of the main, like, people who, like, if you do reach the place of obesity, it's sometimes it's going to be a mental problem.
Mhm.
You could be dealing with depression, you have eating disorders, there's all sorts of variables and things that can be going on, not even including like physical problems with hormones and, thyroids, and like there's all these different things that could be happening. I do understand where Urban's coming from. He's like, it doesn't mean that gluttony is okay. Like, we're definitely
okay.
Yeah.
not saying like it's okay. Like, it's not healthy just to be eating and gorging yourself to the point where you're making yourself unhealthy. And I understand where Urban's coming from, where he's saying like, the pastor is looking out for the well-being of his sheep, his flock. I understand, and he's thinking about their health and their well-being, and he's coming from a place of love. To me, I'm just looking at it, it's hard for the pastor to do
Mhm.
it correctly without all the data information that a medical doctor could do it. But
Yeah,
I understand the perspective you're coming from with it. I just want to be clear,
yeah, no,
even though I'm
no,
just thinking
no,
like a medical doctor would just be a
no.
better
Yeah, and
so
I fully understand you guys side
okay.
too. I mean, I'm not oblivious of that either.
Okay.
Um, I just feel like um, trauma sometimes make us put our guard up way too much, where we don't allow growth. Um, um, and again, the pastor doesn't have to like directly say, "Hey, you're fat," right?
Yeah.
It could just be like, "Hey, let's go have some tea together and." How's your health doing? Have you gone to the doctor lately? Something like that. Or if
Yeah.
that suspicion it's depression or stuff, like, the pastor can help with psychological things. They might not be
Right.
the best choice, but it's a start to maybe then go into a counselor. Um,
Yeah.
I think there's and I get it, like, there's people that are coming from trauma where there was like way too much control, and just because I don't come from that specific where the pastor like controlled my dating life, like I never had someone who told me, I mean, I was taught about dating and all that, but it wasn't like they were checking on me like who are you dating? Like, what have you done? Are you holding hands? Like, people didn't check my phone,
Hmm.
nothing, right? So I
Yeah.
don't have that trauma
I,
from that,
yeah,
or
I think that
you
your
know, hard
experience with
trauma.
pastors is definitely different from Amarys and I. Like
Mhm.
we had very much like different experiences to the point where I felt like the churches I was growing up, the pastor had too much control, and it felt almost like a dictatorship,
Yeah,
like in an
yeah,
inappropriate way. To now, where I'm imagining if you add in the pastor talking about weight, because they're already kind of
yeah,
inappropriate with everything else,
yeah,
and it didn't seem like a loving way. I can imagine, like
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm thinking
and I
like how
get it. I
bad it
get
could
it.
turn into,
Which is
like
why, like, when we
yeah.
started looking for church here, like, that was my concern is that I don't want pastors that are focus on their image or whatever, like wanting to correct us. Like as it is, we went to a church and we mentioned it in another podcast before where they were telling us that our oldest daughter had fear of heights because either there was an evil spirit around her or because she was watching something or we were allowing things to enter our home or whatever. And this is us visiting one day. Like
Yeah, like the first time that we were there, they were telling us
I
that. They're
mean,
like,
red flag to
It's
me.
like over
So
over
oh,
spiritualization.
well, not just that, it was like judging our parenting. Like, you're
Yeah,
the
and
to
judgmental,
watch
yeah.
something that opened this a door to the spiritual, um, I
yeah,
don't know, something that came into your home.
yeah.
Where it's like, huh?
Yeah, so I think the church that we've chosen, and I won't say the pastor's name just because we are trying to respect names, but the pastor that we're in under right now here in Mission, I feel like if we had tea and he said, you know what, let's talk about you. Like, where do you think you're at in your spiritual life? And maybe he mentioned my weight. I don't think I would feel too offended. Like, I
Hmm.
honestly don't think I would feel too offended with that. Um, I've I have acknowledged to myself already that it's an issue, which is why I'm working on it. Um, and I think if I didn't acknowledge
If
it,
you, yeah, it could hurt you
if
if you were in
if I
denial
had
or
a
something.
mentality of like this is how I am and this is my body and if you don't like it, if I had that mentality, I think I would be offended. But because I understand that
Mm.
this body is not a healthy body in the eyes
Yeah.
of God, um, I'm
Like,
acknowledging it. I am working on it. So if if my pastor here in Mission, who we're not close to, we've
No.
talked to him maybe twice. Uh,
He's not
uh,
untouchable or anything like that. It's just that it's such a big church.
it's a big church.
yeah.
We probably will talk to him more now that we are going to be serving a little bit here and there. But if he approached me and said, I honestly will say I don't think I would be offended. I think I would be offended in other things. Like if
Yeah.
he maybe mentioned my parenting somewhere where I feel like, oh, I'm doing a good job as a parent, and he's like, your parenting is bad. I think I would feel offended there.
Mm.
But I think it also comes from like where the person is at. Have they acknowledged that they're in sin? Some people have not acknowledged they're in sin. Like you
Yeah.
consider people that are doing drugs. People do drugs and they honestly believe that um, because they come from the earth, it's okay to a certain extent.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like,
And
there are medical reasons for doing drugs,
there
but
is
I think
medical
I know what
reasons,
you mean.
yeah,
Like, if you're
but
just using drugs as a form of, to escape
escape, yeah,
reality,
yeah,
you're
and
just, I understand what you're saying. You're messing
they
up your mind and
you're messing up
everything.
your
Yeah,
mind, yeah, and they don't acknowledge it as a sin. That I think that's where people get offended with it. But that's just my approach. And again, everyone has a different approach with
yeah,
that. Everyone has different traumas. I have my own traumas. I do. I promise. Uh,
yeah.
and we'll
I
talk about
mean,
those, I guess,
I know
eventually.
we're kind of probably going
We're
overtime.
past our time, which is
We're
fine.
past our time, yeah.
It was
But
a
I
good
just wanted to,
topic.
it's a
I'm glad I
sensitive
got
topic, and my heart goes out for people who have dealt with this sort of issue, and I certainly understand. And I'm glad Amarys decided to share this story and experience because it is a serious topic that a lot of people have dealt with, men and women
Yeah.
alike. So yeah,
We thank her for being vulnerable because that's not easy to do,
yes.
especially in front of a camera. So,
Mhm.
thank you, Amaris, for that. If you're listening or watching to us on YouTube or any other place that you can hear us through a podcast, do follow us there. This is our second season. Our first season, we released about 7 episodes. There were supposed to be 8, but I forgot to post the 8th episode. So it'll maybe someday be a special.
A go There's a ghost episode floating around. So.
Yeah. So thank you again, guys. We'll see you guys next time. And like always, see you guys. Bye.